Welcome to Well Behaved Women. My name is Kyria Phillips. I am one of your hosts. I'm joined by Lauren Schill.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Very excited to talk about Emma today.
Yes, we are here to wrap up right? It's just going to be
a two-parter. It's going to be a two-parter.
Mm-hmm. So we are going to wrap up our Emma Goldman series, Emma Too Fast, Too Furious. I love the title of your outline. I don't know if is that the name of the episode? I love it.
Sure. Fuck it. Let's do it.
It's incredible.
It was a way to take notes and whatever. Let's run with it.
I love it. So yeah, we're here to wrap up our Emma Goldman series. We're going to touch on a lot of historical events. So if any of this stirs up interest in you further, please make note of some of the events we talk about and feel free to research it. I would love to hear what you guys think about some of these things and how they still feel relevant today.
Absolutely. And at the end of this, I'm kind of give a little spoiler. At the end of this, we're actually kind of going to talk about some of the things that we can do to try. I don't really like to get on the activism train, but enough is fucking enough. And I think this is an important cause. So that's coming, just so you know.
And workers and labor is an intersectional issue, extends across a ton of lines. Labor extends across, race and sexuality and gender. There is labor under all
and national borders. This is literally a global problem.
Right. Labor falls under and overlaps and umbrellas all of those and impacts every single one of those. So yeah, this is a pretty big activism one, and I think becoming active in labor movements kind of leads to activism in other ways. So yeah, I'm excited. Yep. We're excited.
We are very excited. It's been a constant topic of conversation, and Gary had to have a talk with me about, I love your political anger, but I hate your political anger sometimes. I'm like, that's fair.
It sounds like you remind me of Henry and Marcus talking about how yes. Carolina and Natalie are love you so much, but the bedroom is no podcasting.
Exactly. It has turned into that. And I'm actually trying to kind of take this seriously. I've written the next couple episodes after what we're doing. And I had to stop research today on their episode after that, because I had to kind of get focused back in on this. And I'm really excited about it. And he loves my enthusiasm, but
he's like, please, you know what? Kyria should not have been sick because I need you to yell into your microphone.
Yeah, if she doesn't hear about it, I have to. And then I have to over and over and over again. But it's great because he's super interested in these topics. When we did Space Babes episode, I could talk to him about any of this and he was on it. He could understand quickly, or he would let me actually explain the concepts to him. So he's been very helpful. Just this one has gotten me riled up a little bit.
Well, I mean, labor anger is definitely I feel a very special type of anger, and it's really hard to let go of.
Well, when you're living it, it's really hard to let go of. It's hard to not be bitter at the system when it's fucking you over.
Yeah. And then you start your big research into it. It's really hard to not only think about that because you see it every minute of your day.
Yeah.
You see it in, another spoiler alert, or you can cut this out. But one of the things in what we can do for May Day or whatnot is not patronize businesses that are openly kind of have signs nobody wants to work and stuff like that. Seeing things like that when you're already beaten down just pisses you off more. So then you go home and you want to rant about it. It's very upsetting. So yeah, I'm glad we have this opportunity.
And being a person that desperately, desperately wants to work, but is not even given the opportunity, not even enough attention for a phone call, it's very upsetting. So it's hard to reconcile both those things without a great amount of anger. Anyway, so let's get started.
Diving in, we left off, I want to try to remember. Berkman was put in jail. I remember that. Oh, and then McKinley was assassinated, and Emma refused to like negatively or condemn the man who did it, and so she was in prison for a little while.
She came out, and she basically, as things kind of devolved in that life, she basically retired from anarchism, and she had changed her name to E.G. Smith, and she was a nurse for like private clients for a number of years. But the 1900s was a world transformed following the death of McKinley, and Emma had no choice but to enter the anarchist world once again. The turn of the century brought so many new legislations, and one of them was the Immigration Act of 1903. McKinley's presidential successor was Teddy Roosevelt, who saw the actions of Leon Czolgosz as particularly despicable. So in this Immigration Act, there was a specific exclusion of immigration of anarchists.
Okay.
For the record, they also excluded sex traffickers and people with epilepsy.
All right. So question, I guess. How were people determining whether or not people were anarchists?
Basically, we will get into that. We will get into, perfect. Because this is not the only time we will hear about an Immigration Act. And it will come back to bite a lot of people in the ass. So I promise we will get into specific terminology, because right now it's kind of broad, right?
Yeah.
Epileptics, anarchists, and sex traffickers.
It is broad, weirdly also specific in some ways, and very confusing because I don't feel like those three things go together. So that's where I'm like,
none of
interesting.
None of them. Yeah. So, and
like, yeah, absolutely, we should ban sex traffickers, but no one's putting like on their like green card application, they're not putting occupation sex trafficker. So I'm like, how are we, how is this being implemented?
Not only that, but come on, epileptics, really?
Yeah, like that one's a weird one.
That's a weird one.
Like very like for no reason to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very strange. Okay, we'll come back to it.
Anyway, we will come back to it. But the fact that they were on this list, it really incensed a lot of anarchists. So because they thought it was a violation of the First Amendment as the idea of free speech. I should be allowed to talk about these things. I should be allowed to talk about my ideologies, and I should be allowed to stand up for the things that I believe in, because that's what our Constitution is supposed to be about. As much as we may hate the political views of those we don't agree with, they are allowed to have those political views just as we are allowed to have ours. Freedom of fucking speech. Emma entered back into activism, and she was forced to take seriously the national cases around the U.S. at that time. There was a real and looming threat of being deported for being an anarchist without a U.S. birth certificate.
Oh, okay.
Does any of this sound familiar?
Yes, absolutely.
Terrifyingly familiar, right?
Yeah, very familiar. And I'm not going to get into even the more... like the Red Scare. There we go. I was like, I'm not going to get into the even more recent ones, but like the Red Scare for being a communist. Like, if you were found out to be a communist, your whole life could be ruined, or you could be deported or something like that. So yeah, this is very familiar. This is something that the United States has done time and time again with philosophies that threaten the status quo, the bureaucracy that's been built.
Absolutely. And
the U.S. has made it a point to do this over and over again with philosophies that threaten the established bureaucracy and the established status quo.
Yeah, absolutely. Those that we deem unworthy of entry or unworthy of citizenship for whatever reason. I mean, this has been a thing.
Those that are already here and are deemed a threat to capitalism and the republic.
Well, like what happens when you have a Native American anarchist?
Yeah.
Where are you going to send them?
What do you do with them?
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, like we would kill them. Or
yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's exactly what we ended up doing anyway. Right. But anyway, in 1906, Emma started a publication of local radicals called Mother Earth. It featured articles from anarchists around the world, as well as reprinting of many writings from different types of authors. Goldman wrote frequently in these articles about anarchism, politics, labor issues, atheism, sexuality, and feminism, and was the first editor of that magazine. She's coming back swinging. She's like, all right, if I'm back, I'm actually back.
I'm on her Wikipedia page, and the cover of the magazine is really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disturbing as fuck because it's like a man laying on the ground with another man shoving the United States flag down his throat. And it's titled Patriotism in Action.
I promise you will not regret going to her Wikipedia page. Everything about it is just wild and what the fuck?
Yeah, and dense. Again, like I said at the top of the episode, her life was touched by so many huge worldwide events. So there's so many places you could spiral off into a Wikipedia hole here for sure.
Well, and with Wikipedia specifically, I mean, that is where I get some of my research. I make sure to try and get at least, 5 or 6 sources for all of these articles. But Wikipedia does make up some of it because there are specific places there are specific things that I look for in sourcing and citing and the different kinds of research that you have to do in order for anything to actually be a good article. Anyway,
so many people at college level researchers and stuff like that are like, Wikipedia is a perfectly fine source.
It really is. If you know how to read it, if you know what to look for and how to read the sourcing and actually check them out.
Yeah, use your aggregate sourcing at the bottom for sure. But it can be a wonderful aggregate tool, like a jumping off point. It's amazing.
It really has been. And there are some, in a couple episodes, I'm going to do one where the Wikipedia article really gave me very little that 15 other articles already gave me. So that it became kind of a non-entity. But in some cases, here, if you go to World War I Wikipedia, it is a giant fucking page, and every single subsection actually has a lot of different links that take you into each different individual action that was cause and effect, and how that exploded from there. I mean, everything.
I give Wikipedia not a ton of money, but I do give Wikipedia some money because I'm this is impressive and very easy for me to research information because it's all everything is linked. Everything that they have a article for within a subsection is linked to that. So you can go back and forth and back. And I don't know. Anywho, I don't know how I got on a Wikipedia podium.
The whole point was, there are some articles that are really short. Hers is very, very long. Hers is very long and very detailed. And it's because there was so much stuff about her that touched a lot of different movements. And we were talking about this earlier. We talk a lot about her being an anarchist. We're talking a lot about the labor movement. And what we will go into today is the idea of the labor movement, of being a syndicalist and of being an anarchist, and how those things, while they aren't the same, they run parallel to each other. And there are basic reasons why they can never kind of become exactly the same thing, but their goals, I guess, for individual freedom are, I don't know how.
Also I feel like there's basic reasons to why they can't be the same thing, but there's also just as many reasons to why they cannot ever be fully extracted from each other. I really feel like one impacts the other. And I mean, Wikipedia does kind of lend to that syndicalism is a current in kind of within the labor movement and within anarchism. It can, and I mean, anarcho-syndicalism is now a spinoff. And so I definitely think they're entwined in some way.
They do. They have to be intertwined because anarchists know that you don't have a world without labor. I mean, that is, despite kind of the common view of anarchism, which is just war and rule and destruction, there are pacifist anarchists that believe in labor for the creation of a thing, for the work of a passion. And we will get into that. We're not going to go right into it right away because she actually goes deep into it with an essay. So we're going to kind of save that for a little while.
Yeah. I do think people would like when people talk about like, well, who's going to be a janitor in an anarchist state or something like that. I do feel if anarchism is fulfilled to its entire potential, which again we'll touch on in the full essay, where like work is by choice, but also for the betterment of your community because individualism and community needs are not separate. If your individual needs are met by the community, there is someone who is willing to be a cleaner, a caretaker. Like there are always those people.
Imagine all of the, I don't know how many of these people you've known, but like I've known a lot of housewives that basically they do a lot of their like kind of busy work and things to keep them going in cleaning. Their houses are always immaculate. Like imagine letting them kind of, hey, I'm happy to like my needs are being met by the community. So I can give back to the community with a thing that I'm good at and I like to do.
Like I cut hair. I would love to cut hair, not for money, but in a community where my needs are met by other people doing things that they want or like to do, or get fulfillment from. And I could, use my productivity to benefit the people closest to me in that community, as opposed to random strangers at 30 minutes a pop in and out of my chair. So.
I would be a baker and a farmer if I knew that like my community needs would be met. I would be a baker and a farmer, and I would just make sure that everybody had their fucking breads and their cakes and their muffins and their veggies and all of that. Like I would be the person that you go to for jam. Speaking of, okay, we can take this off maybe. I don't know. My landlord came over today, and when they walked out, I had given them both a jar of this plum jam that I made. I moved into this house. It had a plum tree in the back and teeny tiny pathetic plums. And I only got like 5 jars out of it. So I gave them a couple. They just went on and on about it. They're like, this is the best jam I've ever had. And I was like,
yeah. Because like it is so special. To get some, like, I don't find plum jam at the store most of the time. Like lots of people aren't finding that. And B, someone made it.
They put their time and attention into it for a thing that they liked to do.
Right. Yeah. Things that are, like, this is so fucking corny, and I'm sorry, but things that are made with like love and care are
just better.
Yeah. Are more fulfilling to the person that receives them.
Yeah. You can always, I've always said this about cooking because I love to cook. You can always taste when a meal is made with love.
Yeah.
When the person is in a good mood.
Yeah.
And they're feeling fulfilled.
Yes, I agree. I feel the same.
That's great.
All right.
Anyway.
Thank you for coming to Wikipedia and Jam Talk. Back to...
Okay. Anyway, Emma's in charge of this magazine. And far from being exultant about entering the anarchist movement again, Emma was dragged down and she was more depressed than she had ever been. She wrote to her lover, Alexander, during this whole time. And when she was pulled back in, she had changed her tune somewhat, saying, quote, I never felt so weighed down. I fear I am forever doomed to remain public property and to have my life worn out through the care for the lives of others. When Berkman was finally released, the reception was really awkward. She showed up with this bouquet of roses, but she could tell that he was just a broken man. For weeks, he struggled in his effort to re-engage with the world, but he had basically given up. Alexander went to Cleveland, and there he bought a pistol with the full intention of ending his life.
How long was he in prison? I apologize.
He was sentenced to prison for 20 years, and I think it had been 20 by that time, because the assassination attempt was in 92. So I would say so he had served 14 years of a 20-year sentence, probably got on parole.
I was like, that's what I was trying to figure out, was like, I couldn't remember the year of the assassination attempt.
Yeah.
So yeah, 1892 to 1906.
That's a long time to be away from the world.
Yeah. Your prison, like, I'm sure it was no different back in those days. Like, prison definitely like changes people.
Yep.
There's an impact there.
It's hard to deal with that. I mean, and I can't imagine how people do it today, where if they've been in prison for 10 years, like the amount of technology that has changed in that amount of time is absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah. Not to mention all of the like difficulties with like employing felons and stuff that like,
we're not even going into that.
Yeah. But prison changes people, I guess. So yeah, he was having a difficult time.
Yeah. So he went back to New York, basically ready to shoot himself in the head. But when he got back there, he learned that Emma and others had been arrested for gathering to discuss Leon Chalgaz. And he suddenly basically had a purpose. What?
Oh, I just shook my head and said Jesus, because they were arrested for meeting to discuss. Like,
yeah, just to talk about him.
Yeah.
But he suddenly had purpose anew. He had to get them out. So after that, he started managing Mother Earth while she was figuring out her shit. Then she toured around the country giving speeches in order to fund the publication. So she still had to kind of peddle her wares and talk publicly, but like it drew in big crowds. This is like a national tour at this point.
Right. But she was still feeling really beaten down by it.
He was, but he basically
her, I thought, right? Like
she was feeling deep. Yeah, she was feeling beaten down. She didn't want to be out there doing that. She was like, I wish that other people could take up this cause so that I don't have to do it, but it needs me. It needs my voice in a place where I know my voice is respected. I know they need to hear what I have to say. So
I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm fucking tired. I shouldn't be doing this, but I am because it's that important.
Right.
So he dealt with managing the publication, and he really did well with that. But then he cheated on Emma with a 15-year-old.
Oh, that's all I have to like.
Yeah.
Like, God damn it.
So even though Emma kind of understood that was just. She understood all of this as a result of being in prison for so fucking long, but she decided that this wasn't what she wanted. So they broke up after decades together.
Yeah, because it's like, I understand your suffering and like the pain that you went through and like your brain is changed because you were in prison for so long. But I fucking waited for you.
Yep.
For 14 years. And then
you go and do this.
With a child.
She was a fellow anarchist. I think she worked at the publication with them, but she was a literal child.
Yeah.
This man is like in his 40s, I think, at this point.
Easily. He's been in, yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross and fucking illegal.
Yeah. While my brain can be like, oh, yes, how very sad. He's absolutely like prison changed him. That's horrible. Like, nope, you're not allowed to cheat on your partner with a child. That's horrifying. And I'm glad she left him.
Yes. To escape that part of her life, she served out of country as a U.S. delegate for an anarchist convention. The idea was to try and work out ideological agreements between anarchists and another group called the syndicalists. Now, I don't like to have a lot of journalist bias, but I will say, if there were ever a movement to get behind as a working class fucker here in 2022, it is the syndicalist movement. This group espouses the founding of local labor unions for workers' rights through striking. Larry Peterson gives a more restrictive definition of syndicalism based on 5 criteria. 1, a preference for federalism over centralism. 2, opposition to political parties of any kind. 3, seeing the general strike as the supreme revolutionary weapon. 4, favoring the replacement of the state by a federal economic organization of society. 5, seeing unions as the basic building blocks of a post-capitalist society. We haven't really gotten into anarchism as a philosophy yet because there are so many different smaller specifications on how one should be an anarchist. And when I get into it here in a little while, we're going to be talking about Emma's specific views of anarchism. But basically, anarchism posits that being a good member of society and not taking advantage of others should be voluntary, and that all aspects of government at all and the state at all were repressive. So these are 2 parallel movements, but there is a big sticking point, and it is the formation of governmental entities of any kind. And unions essentially are smaller governmental entities. So that's where the sticking point lies. So while syndicalists wanted hyper-organization and cooperation on a record as a written thing, anarchism is on the behalf of the belief that cooperation should be voluntary and not forced. So no agreement was reached at the meetings, and Emma came back to the US and continued on with her national lecture circuit.
Wow.
Yeah. Big sticking point. Couldn't come to an agreement.
Yeah. It's so frustrating because I definitely understand the need, excuse me, to have some sort of idea of what the world and what society looks like post-capitalism. Like, I definitely understand not really knowing what that's going to look like. But I don't know. I forgot where I was going with the sentence. First of all, like, I had such
not knowing where
I had
syndicalism,
such a clear defined endpoint when I started it.
Not knowing where that would fit in with the state of capitalism that we live in right now.
Yeah. It's more that I feel that if anarchists ever want to reach true anarchy, I feel that everyone would have to go through a syndicalist period at the very least.
Oh yeah. In order to
I don't think there's a way to go from capitalism to anarchism without an intermediary stop. Like, there has to be some sort of, which I think is what anarcho-syndicalists kind of tend to land on, is that like eventually we would love to come to just like community-based, but we need a transitional period, if I'm remembering like some of my bits correctly.
So you're saying that syndicalism is a necessary midway point between capitalism and anarchism because it allows for the community to start gathering into those smaller community-based voluntary organizations, or like just kind of, is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, kind of. Like, I really definitely think that like labor unions are necessary, and I think they are going to be vital to overthrowing capitalism. So I think that's very important. And I think workers' unions are going to be important going forward. I would love for there to be unions of farmers that just tell their communities what they need, and, you know, and then their communities provide that for the farmers, and the farmers provide their farm wares.
Well, and you know, honestly, with the invention of the internet, that should be so easy to do.
Right.
With the amount of like buy nothings that we have and the amount of organization that we have in those types of neighborhoods, where there are specific cross streets in cities where you have to figure out exactly where you live in order to actually be able to be a part of that. We have the ability to organize like that. We just don't, because we're so entrenched in the systems that we've already got going on.
Well, it's, you know, for a mother of three who either is or isn't working, whatever, it's easier to get on, you know, buy nothing and post up a chair or something. Like, that's very easy.
Mm-hmm.
But and I'm not shitting on the mother here. I'm saying in our world, it's very difficult for that same mother to go out, meet a farmhand and discuss what their needs might be. I know that the internet like makes it possible, but there's still got to be some sort of like
organizational structure.
Yeah, organizational structure. I want it to be person to person so badly. It feels too big to be that from the get.
No, I agree with you. And I think syndicalism is actually a good way to kind of, I think you're right. I think syndicalism is a good way to get to that end point. It allows those things to be on paper. It allows you to like have the official forms. Maybe there's not a cost associated to it, but like, here, I'm a farmer. You need how many bushels of onions every week? Like, fill this thing out for how many people are in your family, so I know how many to give you according to my crop.
So that there's still like an understanding of, because like something like that will then indicate to the farmer supply and demand, but it's very hard for that farmer to track that just in their brain. So like some sort of community hub or community union where it's like, hi, maybe it's a team of 10 for a community. I don't know how big this, I'm just spitballing here, like whatever, but maybe it's a team of 10 for a whole community. And they are the quote unquote bureaucracy, but they're not in charge of anything. They
are there to make the paperwork go.
Yeah, they connect the dots. They tell the farmer, hey, you got 3 new requests for, fall vegetables. Here's the families.
It's essentially a community dispatch center where they're seeing,
they're receiving the yes or no.
Yeah, they're in charge of receiving the orders according to the need and conveying that to the farmer in order, on time, to be able to get it there. They're just essentially they're working the system to allow that to allow that infrastructure to actually work.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of how I see it. Interesting.
We will get more into anarchism kind of as an end goal here in a little bit.
And again, nobody be mad at us for our interpretation or understandings of these ideals.
Please go do your research.
Yeah. And at least for me, this is within the last month or so that I've been reviewing and researching these things. These are pretty new terms to me. And they encompass a lot of ideals that I already had and kind of thought of, but they're totally new terms for me. So please bear with us. And if you have different opinions or insights on how these can be interpreted, I would love to hear them, but don't be rude. That's all.
Right.
I know that some anarchists and communists and socialists and things of that nature can be very angry if they feel as though their ideals are being misinterpreted, and that's not my goal.
Mm-hmm.
I just am informing you that we are, at least I am, a baby learner when it comes to this stuff. So,
but we are learning.
I just wanted to get that. But we are learning, and we are trying, and I will take any feedback that you guys have when it comes to these philosophies, especially because it is all new to me.
Yeah. Because of her relative celebrity before leaving the lecture circuit, it was easy for her to gain popularity in the anarchist world. She was booked in lecture halls and on stages throughout the country, and people who heard her, regardless of whether they actually agreed with her ideologies or not, described her as having a magnetic power, a convincing presence, and force, eloquence, and fire. She was electric. But then they started sending spies. The spies sent into the halls to infiltrate the speeches said that the halls were always packed when she was speaking. They were always a packed house. In 1908, she found love again, this time with the renowned hobo doctor, Ben Reitman.
Love that hobo doctor.
I don't. I hate it. I hate it so much.
I mean, I just I love I don't love it. I'm trying to figure out just the terms that we come up with for people is
it's wildly entertaining, but I hate that idea. Just no, I do not want a hobo as my doctor. If you're not paying this doctor enough to have a home, he should pay, first of all, pay your people more. But
I interpreted it very differently. Sorry.
Well, so
I interpreted it as he treated hobos, because then I read further. I have read some of this a little bit.
No, he did not treat hobos. He spent
By the way, I don't call people hobos. I'm just using the language from the
This is literally the label that he was given. We're not trying to speak poorly of anything, but just this. And that was a term specifically for someone. I don't remember what it was. I think it was they rode on trains, and there's a whole subsection of hobos within the train world.
Sure. Yeah.
But he spent years before medical school as a drifter in Chicago.
Okay.
Ben was a womanizer. Emma and Ben didn't believe in monogamy, and they were all about free love in a time that was way before free love was allowed. But Emma didn't have any other partners than Ben, and it hurt her very deeply whenever he would cheat on her.
So,
not cheat, whenever he would spend time with his other partners.
Okay, so she does. I was just reading this closer because I was going to say, but do they share a commitment to free love? But it looks like she really kind of, it was something she fought with inside herself. She really did believe in freedom of the heart, but it hurt her heart personally.
You wanted to not be jealous, but you're jealous. It's hard. It's a hard thing to reconcile.
Mm-hmm.
In 1910, Emma shifted her intended audiences to a different media source. She liked that people showed up to the lectures, but it was easy to attract non-believers when it's an open forum. She wanted her further teachings to reach audiences that sought them out. So she had worked for years with Mother Earth, both as the editor and as a writer, and still had good working relationship with Alexander, who was the new manager of the publication. He gathered a number of her essays and published Anarchism and Other Essays. We've started kind of changing how we do episodes. You're starting to get more informed before them now, and I fucking love it. This was kind of the reason I started. This was the episode that started that reasoning of, if we're going to talk about this, I want you to be informed because this is a really cool thing and you actually have to understand it.
Right.
So if it's okay, I'm going to read the poem that she starts with the article with, and it's by John Henry Mackay. Ever reviled, accursed, ne'er understood, thou art the grisly terror of our age. Rack of all order, cry the multitude, art thou, and war and murder's endless rage. Oh, let them cry, to them that ne'er have striven the truth that lies behind a world to find, to them the word's right meaning was not given. They shall continue blind among the blind, but thou, O word, so clear, so strong, so pure, thou sayest all which I for goal have taken. I give thee to the future, thine secure, when each at least unto himself shall waken. Comes it in sunshine, in the tempest thrill? I cannot tell, but it the earth shall see. I am an anarchist, wherefore I will not rule, and also ruled I will not be.
I was just clapping.
Oh.
I was applauding your performance. I love that. And I think for me, at least, the big line that sticks out is the truth that lies behind a word to find, to them the word's right meaning was not given, because I think that covers like a really big chunk of like the first page, I think, of Emma's episode, or Emma's essay, where she talks about how so many people who are anti-anarchism are that way because they don't know the true meaning of it. So that's the line that always jumps out to me in that poem.
That and the first one, ever reviled, accursed, ne'er understood.
Yeah.
You don't actually understand it. If you really think that it's not worth a try, like, you don't actually understand what it's about and where the goal is.
And you haven't sat down and had a conversation with an anarchist. You've read a blurb about anarchy and decided, like, that was written by the government or a capitalist, and decided that that's what it was. So yeah.
Well, if I were to ever recommend to you, our 17 listeners, to read something from our sources, it's the 9 pages of arguments for a world with a perfect anarchist harmony, wherein she posits that you can be an anarchist in a harmonious community. You can self-police. You can have a good society. So we're going to go through just a few major points she makes in this article, because you really actually need to understand how informed she was about this movement. It's also just very well written. I wanted to just read through the whole thing and be like, oh, this is so cool. Oh, this is so cool. I have 25 points that I wanted to bring up, and we're breaking them down to just a few. So
yeah, I really
you're welcome.
This essay is available for free through the Berkeley Library if you are a reader. I also found if you type in anarchism, what it really means, or what it really stands for, into podcast platforms, you can find readings of it. So it's not like, you can probably also find discussions of it, but you can also find readings of it, kind of like an audiobook style. So if that's something you'd like to do, that's where I got it from.
Mm-hmm. So in Emma's words, the definition of anarchism: the philosophy of a new social order based on liberty unrestricted by man-made law. The theory that all forms of government rest on violence and therefore is wrong and harmful as well as unnecessary. In this essay, she explains that while there are plenty of arguments to be discussed against anarchism, she was going to only start to address 2 main objectives, and addresses each in turn. The first is that anarchism is impractical, although a beautiful idea. And the second is that anarchism stands for violence and destruction, so it must be violent and dangerous. Therefore, peace can never be attained. So one of the first points that she makes is that the old is always going to be the necessary enemy of the new, and it will do anything it can in including violent and deadly means to preserve the old way versus the new. That's just how things work. And we've seen that over and over again.
As I stated kind of at the top of the episode, this is something that specifically the United States, but other governments as well, does very well. Criminalize an ideology that threatens the status quo, whether or not they actually criminalize it or just like villainize it, and then just kind of beat it down into submission until it's thought of as a fringe idea.
Yeah. She also makes the point that there have always been the social pariahs of the world and that we have always marked them as rejects. We do it so that it is easier to ignore them. At the time, like lepers had to wear certain types of clothing to mark them as lepers so that we could just reject them. That was kind of the peak of like prison stripes and that kind of shit. Like you have to actually wear markings. And in about 30 years, you're also going to see some yellow things on sleeves a lot of places.
Well, and then, I mean, like the book, the Scarlet Letter book, like that's was based off of like beliefs that we had towards women, and we marked them as impure and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's not great.
We want to identify the things we want to reject, so it makes us easier. So then our brain can just filter it out. Like as soon as we know, like this is what we want to reject, then the brain just filters it out as background noise, and you no longer see it in your everyday life.
Yep, absolutely. Do you want to talk about kind of the idea of the individual and the societal instincts?
Yeah, sure. This is actually really interesting to me. So in a community, you have as far as my understanding is that you have a duty to your individual interests. So keeping yourself healthy, whole, that keeps you alive, that keeps you able to move forward and continue in whatever you're doing. But you also have social interests that you might have a duty to, activism inside of the community and taking care of the less fortunate. Historically, and even now, I think we definitely see these ideals pitted against each other. Freedom of self means like that you don't have responsibility to help others. There's a lot of individualistic statements that in my opinion, tend to disregard the need for community. But really within anarchism, as far as I understand from this essay, they are posited as two instincts meant to work together. They serve as a way to unite those and grow as a collective of people if you're serving your own interests and then the interests of the community, as opposed to the interests of billionaires. Did I cover that pretty decently? Does that seem reasonable based on the essay?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly it. And anarchism in her essay basically serves as the arbiter between these two instincts. It serves as a way to unite those interests and help you grow as a collective of truly free people who are all having their basic needs met, who are all able to fulfill their individual instincts or their individual interests because they are also committed to fulfilling their part of social interests.
It posits that a fulfilled individual will want to fulfill the community.
Yes.
And that people are free to contribute to the society in the way that they want. For example, you could be a baker, I could be a barber, somebody else could be a farmer, a healer, a homemaker. Fulfilling those individual needs that make you happy, baking makes you happy, but you are also able to fulfill the needs of community that might need bread or jam, things like that. So that's where I think Emma ties the individual and the community interests together within anarchism.
Yeah.
Anarchism and the way that Emma writes about it in this essay is the bridge that you said, like the arbiter that pulls those two things together. When your individual needs are met, you are more likely to want to perform within the community.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, how much does that already kind of contribute to your daily life? Like, I know for me, when I feel like I have a happy and fulfilled life, I do more things. I bake things for people. I want to go out and see them. I want to go do things. I want to go and have fun because I feel fulfilled by my community and I am in a good place of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think this brings us to the quote we wanted to highlight, which is a perfect personality then is only possible in a state of society where man is free to choose the mode of work, the conditions of work, and the freedom to work. One to whom the making of a table, the building of a house, or the tilling of the soil is what the painting is to the artist and discovery to the scientist, the result of inspiration, of intense longing, and deep interest in work as a creative force.
I fucking love that.
Me too.
It's great.
Working for fulfillment instead of working for a paycheck.
Yep. Doing a thing because it makes you happy. There are plenty of, I mean, how many of us would have like the coolest careers if they paid enough for us to cover all of the capitalist bullshit that we have to live in?
Yeah, like, I mean,
I could go back to being an archaeologist. I could go dig in the dirt again.
Are using their tiny amounts of free time to pursue their passions instead of being able to use their passions to produce a thriving community.
Yep. And they're so entrenched in still living paycheck to paycheck that now they're capitalizing on those passions.
Right. Yeah.
They're trying to sell them.
I am not joking. I'm like, if somebody wants to sponsor the podcast, I will. Like, what's it? What is it? It's a fig bar. I'll sell a fig bar. Sure. Like, does it increase my income a little bit and make it a little bit easier for me to survive? Like,
if it allowed me to have my bills paid, absolutely.
Right? And we started this podcast for fucking fun under your bed. Like, it's, and I'm like, will anyone sponsor us so we can pay bills? Like,
I was talking about that with Gary today. I was like, our first little sound booth was like literally under my cheap ass loft bed that I went and like, I had to go through so much shit to go and actually get that bed. And then they had to drive it there for me.
Yeah. And then you had to cut a mattress pad up. Like,
I stand by it, and it was a fantastic job done by Cole and I because we actually had the materials to do it the right way, and it fucking worked really well. Whatever.
Yeah. Ugh.
But then I spent like a year sleeping 3 feet from the ceiling and bonking my head every time I had like a weird dream, or every time Tony woke me up at like 6 a.m. because she wanted to get the dog to go potty. Or baby breakfast.
Oh my God.
It's Saturday. Let me sleep.
Yeah. Man, no. I live with a morning person and thankfully he leaves me alone. But
anyway, basically the perfect personality is you do the thing that you want to do because of the fact that that's what fulfills you. Do it because you want to do it. Be an astronomer because you want to be an astronomer. Like, do all of the things that you need to learn to be good at that because you want to.
By nature, that will enrich the community. If things are running the way that they're.
You feeling fulfilled will help fulfill us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. She then talks
about the enemies. Is this where we're at?
The enemies of the state. Yeah. Do you want to read that quote?
Anarchists are the enemies of the state.
Yeah, apparently so.
Enemies of anarchism, as written by Emma Goldman. Religion, the dominion of the human mind. Property, the dominion of human needs. And government, the dominion of human conduct, represent the stronghold of man's enslavement and all the horrors it entails.
She was pissed at these things.
Yeah.
She was a hardcore atheist, big time, and she was very against the idea that God is everything and man is nothing.
It is very interesting to me because within this essay, she hates all three of them, definitely, but she dedicates only a paragraph to religion.
I think it's because you can pretty easily make your point and be like, look, everyone who has been to church knows this kind of shit. So if you've been to church twice, you understand the concept. It's not hard to cover.
Yeah, so she dedicates one paragraph to religion and then a full page to property. Um, and
I would dedicate
full page or two to government. So yeah, it's just, it makes me giggle.
Yeah, religion's not that hard to get, but the idea of not owning property is hard for some people because they're the people that are barely homeowners and they're like, hey, I worked really hard to get where I am. And it's like, no, we don't. It's not that we don't want you to have property. It's that we want everyone to be able to live in an area safely. And it's not helpful to, I don't know, whatever. Again, this is post-capitalist society.
Right. People should be able to settle and create homes in places that they want to. But right now, there are so many places that you can't. Like, I can't just go, even if I was able to, like, somehow build a container home, right? I can't just go plop it on some land because that property is owned by somebody. Instead of there just being land for me to put a home on.
Yep.
Like, so I definitely understand, like, the more and more property is robbery is a difficult one for me because I was raised here in a capitalist society. And so it's hard for me to wrap my mind around, but it is also something that I can kind of understand because right now, so much of the property that is available, so much of the land that is available to put cheap homes on is owned by someone and not being used. So that's where I definitely can find myself like, oh yeah, like people should own at least less property.
Yeah. Well, and oh my gosh, in the real estate game right now is another perfect example. Like, you've got more and more homes that are going for higher and higher prices, and it's shutting out anyone with a limited income. And I mean, I say limited income by like $100,000 a year, not limited income like $30,000 a year, which is far truer for most of us.
Right. And it's like, it's 100% dependent on where you live from. Like, I'll be fully transparent. Donald makes a good amount of money. He is a security engineer. We're very, like, his paycheck looks like we're well off, but all of the things that we have had to pay for and maybe put on credit for us to exist over the past couple of years makes that money negligible. I mean, it's still not, like, I'm very grateful he gets paid that. Please do not take that as any other anything else. I recognize the privilege that we have in that, but living in Seattle right now, the house prices are insane, and the prices that are, or the houses that are available, I'm not seeing many of those houses being purchased by families. They're being purchased by housing conglomerates and then flipped to turn into a rental that's twice the amount of the mortgage. Like, so yeah, property is a weird one because I'm definitely like, no, I want to have a house, but I know that she's not saying you should be homeless. I absolutely know that, but it's
also a hard mentality to break away from.
Right. Yeah.
And because I've been working my whole goddamn life. Yeah. I've been working my whole goddamn life to try and afford a house that I know that I will never get because I live now.
Yeah. And then I've been working my whole damn life to get a house. And now anarchists tell me I shouldn't have one, like in terms of property. And that's not how I feel.
We don't want you to be homeless. They don't want you to be homeless. It is, they want the idea of collecting properties to not exist.
Right. And that I can 100% get behind, but I can see how somebody who is not already a leftist or already having some sort of community ideals in their brain, or doesn't have a whole lot of information about it, being like, whoa, that's a step too far. That's where you lose me. I'm out.
Right.
I can't have property. No thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then government, she also hates them.
Law has never made men a whit more just, and by any means of their respect for it, even the well-disposed are daily made agents of injustice. The state is the scourge of its own creation. Where the most rigid laws exist, the most accidents occur. We talked about this with the last episode where, the most accidents were occurring where, like, basically the beginnings of OSHA standards were starting to be created.
Yeah.
And all of that was supposed to be fixed by laws, but it made it worse for a long time.
Plus, it's like writing political campaigns are expensive. You are like, we've seen it time and time again. Politicians either stick to their morals and then they lose. You never hear from them again. Or you take a bunch of donations from lobbyists and you're no longer and you forget about the people who wanted to elect you, and and then you no longer help them. Like, it feels like, and what Emma is saying is that the government exists only to maintain or protect property that's owned by already rich people or corporations. Like, I guess that's how. Help me.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, so we were kind of talking about this before we started recording. George Floyd murder and then the protests that followed. Perfect example. Wait, that was when the Kyle Rittenhouse shootings happened, right?
Oh,
in a different city, but like it was the resultant protests that.
So it was the George Floyd verdict came down, and then that same day, a man was killed in Kenosha, Wisconsin. A black man was killed by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the same day that the verdict was read for George Floyd's murderer. And so
for Derek Chauvin?
Yes. The day that his verdict was read, another black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin was killed by police.
Okay.
And I cannot remember his name. I deeply apologize for that, but I do know that is what kicked off more of the protests.
All right. Let's say his name. So I'm going to look at something real quick.
Jacob Blake was his 2020. The police shot Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Washington. And those are the protests that arised that Kyle Rittenhouse went to.
Right. And Kyle Rittenhouse said he was going because he wanted to protect this local car dealership. They protected it by arming themselves to the teeth. And he had literally a fucking AK-47. He had some.
I think he had an AR.
An AR.
And not only was he there to protect property,
he was one of many.
So were the police. The police were on site to protect property, members of the state. And another one that I want to reiterate, I think I brought it up on our last episode about Emma, is the Line 3 protest, where Enbridge has hired state police and city police officials to protect their drilling sites. The state is being hired to protect property.
By private corporations.
Yep, by private corporations. So this is clearly not a new thing if Emma was writing about it in the 1900s, and it's still happening.
Yeah, exactly. She goes into criminality. You were kind of talking about like the inability for politicians to both have a career in politics and also not be corrupt. She also kind of says the same type of thing. Like, you can't have
outline. So long as people are stuck in misery, crime will continue.
Yes, I was going to say that, but I also what it's going to say. Basically, she believed that capitalism was incompatible with human liberty.
Yes,
those were two ideas that could never necessarily coexist. Because as long as capitalism exists, it will always exploit that which can be exploited for the gain of the few. But yeah, you were going into the other point, which was
sorry, because you had mentioned she had touched on crime. And
right. Which is also another. So this is another thing, is basically we have all of these crime stats and we talk about how crime has gone up and down and back and forth. As long as people are stuck, let's see, what's her actual quote here? The most absurd apology for authority and law is that they serve to diminish crime. Aside from the fact that the state is itself the greatest criminal, breaking every written and natural law, stealing in the form of taxes, killing in the form of war, and capital punishment. It has come to an absolute standstill in coping with crime. It has failed utterly to destroy or even minimize the horrible scourge of its own creation. Crime is not but misdirected energy. So long as every institution of today, economic, political, social, and moral, conspires to misdirect human energy into the wrong channels, so long as most people are out of place doing things they hate to do, living a life they loathe to live, crime will be inevitable, and all the laws on the statutes can only increase but never do away with crime. What society as it exists today knows the process of despair, the poverty, the horrors, the fearful struggle the human soul must pass on its way to crime and degradation.
Talking about crime going up and down and things like that, like violent crime, as far as I understand, is down from the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. Property crime, like theft and stuff, is up because people are broke and desperate. Mm-hmm. They are in the process of despair. They have poverty. They know the horrors of all of that. And they are living a life that they loathe. They are doing things that they hate to do, not making enough money to pay their bills. People are doing things that they don't want to do. They're working a job they don't want to work. They don't like their life because they're broke. And so crime goes up.
Where do we get the highest rates of crime?
In the poorest neighborhoods. And I truly, I don't think that is a moral failing on poorer people, but a mark of desperation.
Absolutely. As long as people are fucking miserable, it's going to keep happening.
Right.
Not that I'm excusing it, but why do people say they cheat? I was fucking miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not excusing it. I wish people didn't steal from other people, but I can absolutely see the paths that people go down to view it as inevitable or as their last option, and they don't want to, but they have to, or something. So yeah, I think we've covered really good on that.
We've covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and then you still want to jump in and cover May Day, right?
Yeah, that's actually, I've got some more stuff. I've got fucking a lot more. If you want to, we can make this a 3-parter.
I mean, it's up to you. We're coming up on an hour and 40. And so I don't know how much you normally cut out and what that might.
No, we can make this into a 3-parter for sure. Cause this is a huge issue. This is a lot of stuff.
Okay, everyone. So we lied to you. It will not be at the top of the episode. Whoopsies. We told you it would be a 2-parter. It's gonna be a 3-parter. It's a 3-peat. We're going to have to come up with another catchy name.
There is just still so much to cover.
So much. And she is such a cool figure. And like we've said 1,000 times, she lived in the United States or was dealing with labor movements in the United States and in Europe during such vital and eventful periods of our country's history. So there's just a ton. Also, we're loving it. This is very enjoyable for us. I'm having a great time. I really love this topic. I think it really is relevant for today. So, we're excited. We're going to record again in a couple of days. By the time you're hearing this, Emma 1 will be out already. So,
yay. I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about the next few episodes that we're working on. I'm putting a lot of energy into this. I need something to do with my time. And I think pandemic has affected us all to our fucking cores. And I need some sense of normalcy back to what my life was before. And this was a good part of it. So,
yeah, I've set up reminders to do podcast stuff twice a week at the very least. So I have during the day when I really want to try and expand this a little bit. I don't know that I'll ever be a famous podcaster, but this brings me joy and it's really fun and I like doing it.
Our sound might be off because we're sitting under a table and in a closet. We're experimenting with
our best.
We're trying with what we have. It's not great, but it's what we got.
Yeah, but I hope you guys are doing well. doing as well as you can, staying healthy, drinking your water,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.